There are certain things that normal human beings never expect to experience, like waking up and discovering that your own house is being used as an underground water collection point by people you've never seen before. It sounds like an exaggeration, but that's exactly what happened to me. And, of course, all with the sacred blessing of the woman who presides over the damn HOA. It all started on an ordinary Monday. I woke up, made my coffee, put on my ridiculously comfortable bathrobe, and went out into the yard with my dog. Only instead of his usual pee on the hibiscus, what I saw was an agricultural apocalypse scenario. 3 men in helmets, a noisy generator, and a drill bit drilling into my lawn as if they were after oil. I stopped, cup in hand and mouth half open, and for a second I thought I'd woken up in the wrong yard. But I didn't. It was my yard, my lawn, my land, and they were drilling into it as if it were a public construction site. I took a deep breath. I walked up to one of them and asked with the politeness that only disguised indignation can give, "Is there a specific reason why you're digging up my yard?" The guy, all sweaty, looked at me with the expression of someone hearing the most obvious question in the world, and answered, "The HOA authorized it. It's for the construction of community wells." Wells, community, on my land. The natural reaction would have been to explode right there, scream, rip the cable off the machine, and threaten to call the police. But I froze. Firstly, because I had just woken up and my soul was still reeling. Secondly, because I thought it might be a location error. Something like it was supposed to be next door. After all, wouldn't anyone be crazy enough to just approve drilling on someone else's land without, I don't know, asking permission, right? I turned around, went inside, opened the HOA group with my eyes on fire, and, of course, there it was. A crude PDF attached, written, "Water for All Project, Phase 1, Support Wells." And on the list of sites selected for the first phase, there was my number, my plot of land. In big letters, as if it were municipal land. And guess who signed as responsible for the initiative? Her, the sustainability enthusiast, the defender of community order, the muse of control. The anger came like a wave. It wasn't just about the hole. It was at the audacity, the certainty of impunity. That woman thought she owned the neighborhood so much that she had the nerve to authorize drilling in my yard as if it were her own. And the most revolting thing, I was never consulted. No email, no visit, no little note nailed to the gate. Nothing. I went back to the yard. I watched the crater opening up more and more. My poor dog had given up on understanding. He just sat there staring at it as if it were a new episode of some absurd series. And me? I stood there, my mind boiling with plans for revenge. But it wasn't going to be impulsive. I'm not one of those. I wrote down the names of the company that was doing the drilling. I took photos. I made videos. I documented everything. Because if the neighborhood wanted to play common area, I was going to show what happens when they mess with the land of someone who knows how to use sarcasm and cement with equal dexterity. The work lasted 3 days. 3 days with people coming in and out of my yard, talking loudly, stepping on my grass as if it were a store carpet. The woman? She didn't even show up. She stayed in the comfort of her home, probably thinking she had carried out a great collective action. I'm sure she was hoping for a citizenship award, or at least an honorable mention at the HOA meeting. The last day was the one that gave me the final click. When the workers finished the 5th well, they put on temporary covers and left as if they had left a present. One of the guys even dared to smile and say, "That's it. Now the whole neighborhood thanks you for your collaboration." Collaboration. That word hammered into my head, because collaboration implies participation, consent, willingness. And none of that was collaborative. It was invasive, disrespectful, and, above all, stupid. And it was there, that late afternoon, with the sun beating down crookedly on the edges of the wells, that I made the decision. I wasn't just going to cover them up. I was going to cement it. I was going to bury all that rubbish. And if possible, turn each hole into a monument to the abuse of authority disguised as a community initiative. Cement bought, shovel separated, plans drawn up, and let the concrete come. The following Saturday, I got up before the sun, on one of those early mornings when silence seems to respect the fury you're about to unleash on the world. I bought 14 bags of cement, 2 wheelbarrows, a shovel that looked like a bladed weapon, and 3 meters of tarpaulin so as not to get my sidewalk dirty when preparing the mixture. If you were going to bury a mistake, do it with class. While the rest of the neighborhood slept, or pretended not to know what was going on, I began my ritual. I opened the first well like someone who opens a symbolic tomb, looked inside and thought, "You thought you were going to get water from here, right?" The mixture was ready quickly. The first bucket went down with gusto. It sounded like a well-delivered slap to someone who never listened to you properly. The first hole swallowed the cement like it was thirsty. The second seemed deeper, and I had to reinforce it with gravel, just to make sure the damage was well distributed. On the third, I almost got emotional. I had a quick look at all the HOA flyers, all the useless meeting minutes, all the reminders that had already been stuffed in my mailbox, and I put it all there, inside the concrete bucket, metaphorically. At around 9 a.m., when the sun began to beat down directly on my back, one of the neighbors came over, a bit awkwardly. He was the kind of guy who never gets involved, but always takes a peek behind the curtain when he hears a noise. He looked at the wells being sealed, looked at me, sweaty and covered in cement dust, and asked, like someone trying not to step on eggs, "Are you going to seal them all?" I raised my head, looked at him with the expression of someone who has just woken up for war, and answered, "No, I'm going to bury them with honor, the way they deserve." He didn't reply. He just made a muffled, "Ah," shook his head, and went back inside as if he had just witnessed an exorcism. Maybe he had, an exorcism of passivity, of the lack of limits, abuse disguised as regulation. What bothered me most wasn't even the project itself. It was the silence. Nobody questioned it. Nobody consulted me. It was as if my property had been put up for sale, and the price was collective benefit. And the woman behind it all? Gone. No sign of her. She probably knew that what she had done was indefensible, and decided to hide behind the cloak of formality, as usual. By midday, I was at the last well. The mixture was still warm, my arms were shaking, but my soul was light. The yard, which had once looked like an unauthorized construction site, was now beginning to resemble what it had been before, my space. With every hole cemented, sealed, and with a smooth surface, like a slap in the face to anyone who thinks they can do whatever they want just because they have a position in a neighborhood association. I finished. I cleaned everything up. I poured water on the floor. I changed my clothes. I took a long shower, the kind where you almost reevaluate your life. I sat on the sofa and waited, because the next chapter was certain. Scandal time. It didn't take long. The next day, at 8 a.m. sharp, my doorbell rang. It was her, in a straw hat, tablet in hand, dressed in peace and love, but with boiling eyes. She feigned kindness. "You made structural changes to the HOA-approved system." I took a deep breath, leaned against the door, and spoke quietly. The kind of tone that only comes out when you don't want to argue. Just shut down. I modified my property. What had been done without my consent has been corrected. If you want to dig a hole, there's a lot of vacant land nearby. Just buy it. She shuddered. Literally. Her face started to turn red. Her eyes went wide. Her lips pursed in a tremor of someone who isn't used to being contradicted. And she didn't say another word. She turned her back and left with the haste of someone who has just lost a war without having fought. I thought she was going to disappear again. But the problem with people like that is that they can't accept losing. They go to Plan B, emergency meetings, formal notes, poorly worded accusations, and when the HOA notice arrived on Monday, I was ready, because nothing screams desperation more than a desperate attempt to patch up a mistake with letterhead. The letter from the HOA arrived folded with a red ribbon. Invitation to an elegant meeting style, only with the legal weight of used toilet paper. It began with a "Dear Resident," which already made me lazy, because if you're going to accuse me of something, at least have the decency to put my full name, not a generic condominium pronoun. It basically said that structural modifications to community projects require prior approval, even when those modifications consist of burying, cementing, and completely forgetting anything they've approved. At the end, a call for clarification at the next association meeting. The woman was clearly setting the stage to expose me. She couldn't force me to reopen the wells, but she could try to turn me into the villain of sustainability. And, let's face it, what could be more cowardly than pretending to be on the side of ecology while using someone else's house as the backyard for your own agenda? I arrived at the meeting with the cleanest face in the world. Shorts, a t-shirt, and a black folder with all the records. Photos of the wells being dug without authorization, videos of the workers saying they were there because the president told them to, and the final touch, a printed copy of the deed to my land. The one that said, in all its letters, that the property was exclusive, private, and protected by law against this kind of invasion disguised as collaboration. She was there, of course, smile rehearsed, hair pinned up millimetrically, tablet in hand as if she were going to command a UN presentation. The problem with these authoritarian figures is that they don't realize when they're about to fall over from their own arrogance. The meeting began with that tired protocol, calling of names, reading of the minutes, a minute's silence for some mistakenly uprooted bush on plot 34. And then came her moment. She stood up with the posture of someone about to give the speech of the century, coughed twice, and began to read the report of serious nonconformity. The words were carefully chosen to transform the scene. She didn't say, illegal holes in other people's land. She said, pre-approved community facilities. She didn't say she didn't ask for permission. She said, there was implied consent through no prior objection. And when she mentioned cement, she used the phrase, unauthorized obstruction of collective infrastructure. My God, that wasn't minutes. It was a play. All that was missing was the spotlight and the curtain falling at the end. I asked to speak, as protocol dictates, and when I was allowed, I spoke with the calm of someone who carries evidence and hatred in equal measure. If I may, I would like to present images and records showing that the holes were drilled without any prior warning to the owner, i.e., me. The drilling system began without consultation, without a meeting, and without any document signed by me authorizing the use of my land. I placed the papers on the table slowly, one by one, with each sheet a sigh, with each image an uncomfortable silence. By the time I got to the video section, the atmosphere was one of a wake. This one is the company worker saying, verbatim, that the HOA had it drilled here. This is a printout of the notification sent just after the drilling. And finally, this is the deed to my land, which has never belonged or temporarily belonged to any collective, group, association, or messianic ecological movement. The woman said nothing. Her lips tightened, her hands folded. Her upright posture began to drop by half a centimeter a minute, like a balloon slowly withering away. The acting chairman of the meeting called for a break. 3 other members of the HOA looked at each other as if they had just realized they were in a leaky boat and were trying to row with a teaspoon. When they returned from the break, the tone changed. The call became a suggestion. The request for a retraction became, let's evaluate the next steps. And the president's big attack became just a footnote calling for more community dialogue. The meeting ended, and she left before I could say a word, probably to avoid the embarrassment of having to face me after the fall. But there, in that room full of cheap chairs and cold coffee, it was clear to everyone. The woman had crossed the line. And when someone crosses the line with fresh cement, there's no saving speech. In the days following the meeting, the neighborhood went into a kind of silent mourning. No one commented directly on the fiasco, but reactions were everywhere. Neighbors began to greet me with shy nods, like someone apologizing for having watched the invasion in silence. Even the gentleman who always complained about my 1 centimeter off the standard fence started to look away. That was the weight of collective shame. And curiously, all thanks to the silent fury of 5 holes sealed with cement and dignity, the woman from the HOA, now reduced to a position she still insisted on carrying with an air of false normality, disappeared for a while. The neighborhood group, once bustling with irrelevant agendas such as "Can you use plastic flamingos on the balcony?" became mute. It was as if, for the first time in years, people had stopped to think about what they were really allowing by letting an obsessed neighbor turn rules into a justification for violating other people's boundaries. But I wasn't finished. Cementing the wells was just the beginning. That needed to be remembered, not forgotten. Because when you let go, you teach. It teaches you that it's worth pretending to be democratic in order to practice abuse. It teaches you that it's better not to pick a fight, even when they're digging in your yard. And what this neighborhood needed wasn't another HOA meeting. It was a reminder nailed to the ground. I went to the building store with a clear objective: to buy metal sheets. Simple, sturdy, ready to withstand sun, rain, and the wide eyes of gossipy neighbors. I bought 5, 1 for each well, 1 for each hole they tried to make in my patience. The first one read, "Here comes Notion, 2024, killed by a drill authorized without permission." The second, "Private property is not a suggestion." The third, "Sustainability is not a code for invasion." The fourth, "Community? Well, a noble idea, a thief execution." And the last one, my favorite, stuck right in the middle of the yard. "Not here." I installed each one with screws and concrete. No loose nails. I wanted them to stay there for a long time, going through HOA administrations, springs, and new residents. I wanted each person who passed by to understand that, on that lot, there was a limit. The afternoon I finished, I sat in the lawn chair with a cold beer and watched. The neighbors pretended not to look, but I could see it in the corners of my eyes, through the shaking shutters and the slowed footsteps. The woman never showed up. Not that day. She came 2 days later. No uniform, no tablet, no disguise. Just her, with a clean face, flat shoes, and the look of someone who hasn't swallowed the cement yet. She stopped outside the fence and stared at the central sign for a few seconds. The look on her face wasn't one of regret. It was one of defeat, swallowed dry. "You could have handled this differently, you know." My answer came with a long, leisurely sip of beer. "And you could have asked me before you drilled into my floor." She stood there for a few more seconds, perhaps waiting for me to say something conciliatory. I didn't. Not because I wanted to maintain the warlike atmosphere, but because there was no more conversation possible. When someone digs holes in your land without permission, what they really dig up is the very respect you might have for them. After that, he never tried to meddle again. She moved on to other matters, far away from my fence. The position in the HOA was still hers, but the decisions became truly collective. For the first time, the neighborhood began to demand that everything be voted on, discussed, and approved in a transparent manner. Irony or not, the Wells scandal ended up giving a little more voice to those who had always been just spectators at meetings. My yard, now home to 5 discrete monuments of resistance, has become a point of curiosity. Some new residents ask me if it's an art installation. I say yes. Conceptual art based on anger and concrete. Some laugh, others understand. The important thing is that no more holes have been dug here, and every time it starts to rain hard, I hear the sound of water hitting the roof, running down the gutters, and I think about how it all started. An unauthorized drilling, an extra drop of water, and a woman who mistook leadership for domination. Today, my greatest pleasure is watering my plants with water from my private cistern, well-protected, exclusive, built with a permit, planning, and a reinforced padlock. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people like that never go away. They only retreat, and it's always good to have concrete ready. And if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a comment and a like.